Greetings, students, and welcome to Week 2. This week, we're going to be talking about the cultural context of school, and we'll also be talking a little bit about change theory. You may remember that in our lecture this week, we talked about Peter Drucker's, the quote attributed to Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. In many organizations, culture is really the secret sauce, the ingredients that keep people happy. So no matter how brilliant a librarian or administrator's strategic plan is, it must align with the existing culture or the changing culture of a school to succeed. So in terms of the big picture, success is not just about having ambitious ideas. Success requires an understanding of organizational and political culture of your school district and your local school climate as well. One way we can better understand the culture of our schools is to conduct environmental scanning, and that's what you'll be doing for assessment number 1. There are hidden power structures. There are all sorts of community needs and contexts that you need to understand to better serve all the stakeholders in your communities. You can get started, and among the things I'm suggesting in 592, and as well in your environmental scan, is that you do things like attend board meetings. You'll be able to see what the attitudes towards education are in your community. You'll be able to see which members vote in which ways and choose different sides. It's really great because you can now do this with archived video or even streaming as well as in person. You also are going to be scanning your community, so I hope that you'll have an opportunity on your way to or from work to drive through the neighborhood, to read the local newspapers, to join the parent Facebook groups or the next door groups. These tell you a little bit more about what your community's priorities are, who the leaders are. And some of those leaders may well be members of your PTO, PTA. And so it's helpful to kind of know what the gossip is, what the concerns are, what the priorities are. And Facebook and Nextdoor can help you understand that a little bit. You also will want to analyze institutional documents, and these can be school improvement plans. They could be records of how your students have done on assessments. They could be portraits of a graduate. They can be all sorts of documents. Most often, they're really accessible on the district's website. You want to look at the environment outside of your school, as I mentioned. You do want to walk around. You want to visit the shops, understand to what types of environments your learners return at the end of the day. And this will help you anticipate some less visible needs. Understand your neighborhood geography. Look at the types of housing, as I mentioned. Get to know the local shops. Some of those people, even if they don't have students in your school, can be really helpful. I had a local sign maker who was wonderful in giving us good prices when we were doing new signage. Also look for evidence of multiple languages spoken and multiple cultures served. As I said, the local newspaper can really clue you into the type of discourse that's happening on in your community. Look at demographic data using tools like Census Report, CityData.com, the Educational Opportunity Project. This will help you understand trends and such things as average household income. In addition to attending board meetings, you can monitor the Board of Education in other ways. Generally, these are actually board meetings are often covered by the local newspapers and analyzed a bit. And so I'd love for you to get involved in that kind of detective work. It's really important that you start a baseline. When you record a baseline, you're able to demonstrate, to show evidence of the changes that you make. So you want to document these early changes. One of the ways is by using before and after photographs or video. They can help you really establish a baseline very visually that you can show at a board meeting. The documentation that you are building now will be important in your annual reports. And in fact, sometimes districts use evidence from librarians in the district's annual reports. You want to have people understand the before and after. I kept on a bulletin board photographs of before our renovation and after, because I'm so glad I did that, because I was so excited about the change. I really might have easily skipped that step, but it was very important. And kids afterwards, years later, were going, "Oh, that's what this looked like before when it was a gym." So it's a good idea to do that, mostly for your evidence. And as you collect evidence, don't lose the nice stuff. Keep a nice stuff folder. I'll talk about this again later. Keep those notes from parents and teachers, those emails, the newspaper clippings about library events, student work that's particularly important about your influence, photos of kids engaged. Use these for inspiration, not only for your annual reports, but your nice stuff folder will be a good place to return to on days that you're not feeling completely upbeat. We're going to take a look at who are the people in your neighborhood. And you can see some of those labels down there are helpful to kind of figure out these are not just people who work near you. These are people you can work with, people you can help, and people who can help you. You have so many potential partners. For instance, the custodial staff are essential partners for managing and transforming the library's physical environment. They can help with such practical needs as helping you understand weeding procedures. How exactly do we get books out of our collection? And that can be a very tricky process. They can help you dispose of discarded titles that you're not giving away. They can also help you move heavy boxes of supplies and books. Collaborating with custodians also allows the librarian to rearrange your furniture more easily, to create better flexible working spaces. And sometimes the custodians, or I'm not sure what that group of people in our district level are called, but they have some specialized roles, such as carpenters. They have electricians as well. They can help you realize some of your creative visions for the space. I had my standard tables transformed into high-top tables, and the carpenters really enjoyed making legs for me. The electricians helped me moving the electricity around our space. You're probably going to want to have charging stations and things like that. And your custodians can help you plan with things like that. You want to scan your facility for other types of clues. How secure is the building? Does the faculty feel safe? Is there graffiti, litter? Is there great pride about the building? Do students respect the space? There are clues all over your building about its climate and the values it keeps. You can act as a researcher and really observe a lot about the physical state and what it tells you about the school itself. So some of the clues you might look for, of course, the cleanliness and care. One of the things I noticed first about my new principals, some of them actually stopped, and it's not surprising at all. Many of us do this, and pick up any litter in the hall as we pass. We don't just step around it or over it. That shows pride and ownership that members of a community take in their communities. The displays and bulletin boards, these spaces reveal the values by showing that they celebrate student work, how much they celebrate student work, student voice, and student differences. Security, how locked up is your building? How open is it? How important is the security? And that could be very important in many buildings. The presence of graffiti can often provide a message about community pride. How welcoming is the signage? Classroom doors often offer clues into the culture. For instance, welcoming signs and posters that share what each teacher is currently reading in a connected and learner-centered atmosphere. Physical obstacles are important to note, just as in the library itself, flow of traffic and the absence of barriers, the absence of what not to do messages in favor of more positive, trust-based messages, and the absence of a punitive message all over the school. These are important things to note, and certainly important things to think about when you design the materials that you're going to be posting in your own library. Of course, you also want to listen to the people around you. Systematically observe your building's social and professional dynamics to find leaders who might not have an explicit role but possess some significant influence. Mingle outside the library as well as in your library. In order to understand your culture, you must go to the faculty room. There's usually a faculty dining room. Visit the cafeteria and attend department meetings and listen not only to what is said, but what is not being said. Watch for clues. Pay attention to teachers' body language, bulletin boards, and to whom students and staff go to for guidance. Who are the trusted people in this community? Now, when you're in that faculty room or lounge, there are subtle ways and there are some very powerful clues that can reveal some very pervasive but invisible things about school culture. Your mingling is essential for understanding the social and professional mesh of the building, and for you not to operate only as an isolated island, but to be an integrated part of this building's culture. Look at conversational nuance. Listen not only, as I said, to what's being said, but those things you should expect to be said in a faculty room that are not being said. There are topics around which there is silence, and that can be as telling as active dialogue. You want to look at the nature of the information exchange. Are they more personal or more professional? In what ways are teachers using the space to seek support, or are they just social retreats and that sort of thing? Observe also the presence of cliques. How are teachers behaving and interacting? Are there subgroups within the faculty? Are they competing in some way? How friendly are they to new teachers? How off-putting are they to some of the teachers who might need their help? Map this kind of influence. Look at the faculty room or the lounge as a barometer for whether the school environment is a happy one. Observe these underlying feelings that they will be easy to see. You'll see people's expressions of isolation, failure, or sometimes despair, as teachers really often feel professionally alone, despite being surrounded by colleagues. I was very lucky to have a faculty a kitchen actually in my workroom was large enough to be a kind of lunch area, and people rotated in and out of it. So I got out to the cafeteria sometimes, but not all the time. Had a coffee machine in the back, had people coming in and talking to me all the time, had a refrigerator that was large enough for folks to leave their sandwiches. And so we had a lot of common kind of friendly action there, and it often became partly a lunchroom for some teachers. And so I was also conscious of inviting different people in. See how people get along, observe their body language, get the idea of who sits together, where people congregate, and participate in the culture. Participate, but don't get engaged in gossip. This gossip can be deadly in a school, and you want to avoid becoming part of it. I'm not going to go deeply into why, but I think you all kind of have a sense for that. And while you're doing all of this, what you're also doing is looking for those leaders, those people who have implicit, not necessarily explicit power. They may not have a formal title as an administrator or department chair, but they have great influence and people trust them. And those are important people, and you want to earn their trust as well. In fact, try to determine who those Barbaras are from Abbott Elementary in your building. How might you support and align with them and use their influence to help you gain your own? Let's shift gears for a little and talk about change. Change is part of any institution's culture. It can be accompanied by changes in power and competition for dominance. It can also present librarians with opportunities. Consider some of the change movements you observe. We're looking right now at science of reading as a major campaign in many elementary schools. We're grappling with AI integration. We're looking at political differences in schools. There's a lot going on in terms of change. One of the things that I think has inspired me is the message. I believe it's maybe 10 or 12 years old right now. AASL says that the mission of the school librarian is to transform teaching and learning. We'll talk a lot about that in this course. But most importantly, librarians who understand the models of the stages of change can time their moves, understand chaos, almost like in the Kulthau process, understanding that chaos and what comes out of the chaos, form coalitions, generate quick wins, and anchor new practices into policy and culture. There are several models of change. One of the more famous ones was from the late 1940s, and Kurt Lewin developed a three-stage change model. First, we need to unfreeze, to create readiness for change by challenging the status quo, to ask questions, to share data and stories. This is a very simple model. Then to engage in change, to introduce and test new behaviors and processes. So you might pilot the practices, communicate about successes and challenges, and offer support and change and training. And then refreeze. You want to stabilize and embed the new way of working into the culture and routines, update your policies, align your routines, and celebrate your successes. So remember Lewin, but he's not the only one that's been thinking about change. Michael Fullen has been thinking about change in the education environment, and his change theory looks at a few ways that change works well when we attack it with moral purpose, when we understand the change process, recognizing that the messiness that's there, when we build relationships, that is the single most common factor to success, is improved relationships in the process of change. When we build knowledge and share and we learn together, when we make this a cohesive experience. And the school librarian is really uniquely in the right place for this kind of for working on change, because our work is expressly about collaboration and coaching and co-planning. So these are natural positions for the school library, being agents of change. Fullen says that we don't have to wait for everyone to agree before starting. Often people only believe that change works after they see results in their own practice. And so that sort of aligns with what we say about ask for forgiveness rather than permission. You can't mandate what matters. Skill, thinking, and commitment cannot be forced. They must be cultivated through participation. And we need both individualism and collectivism if we're going to make this work. People have to be able to test and process ideas individually, and then the group must eventually move towards a shared vision. As we begin to look at change, we want to look at the notion of how new ideas and innovations are adopted. I know it's been attributed to a lot of people, but I believe it was my friend Doug Johnson in the library land who said, "What are the flowers first? The rocks are harder to grow." And while that is a kind of a good way to look at it, and it often works really well, we don't want to leave the rocks completely behind. And speaking about the flowers and the rocks, this is kind of a little bit more formalized in some of the research that's been done relating to adoption of change. And so, especially with technology, Rogers is the theorist who is the most often quoted relating to a technology adoption. And what he has done is explained how different groups of people adopt new technologies at different rates, usually following a bell-shaped curve. And you can see in that bell-shaped curve on the right there that it is, you've got 5 basic groups: the innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and then I don't like this word, but laggards. And I do believe there's another word that Rogers has used. You can take a closer look at what identifies all of those groups in this little list here. And you'll be able to, as you start introducing new ideas, Start looking at the people who are around you and kind of figure out who your innovators are. They're probably your flowers, your innovators and your early adopters, and you want them with you. There are the innovators who just jump in and can tolerate the bugs and the incomplete features of being first. They're the beta testers. But it's really important to get those early adopters because they're the people who have the opinions that people really respect. Their ideas, their successes are more likely to influence the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards than those innovators who will jump in. And you can see the number in terms of the percentages that you have in that bell curve. And as you do this, as you introduce a new idea, whether it has something to do with a new strategy and research or a new technology platform that's COPPA compliant, you will begin to identify those people. And sometimes helping that late majority, focusing on one group or another from time to time, may really help them become more successful and in turn help you be more successful. But I think this particular curve is Rogers has helped me think about change in my practice. This is an example, and you can read it on your own, but I wanted to give you an example of what it looked like in a particular situation, and in this case, introducing a new technology platform. And in this case, I was saying that in adopting a new platform, the curve says, don't start with everyone, start with the right someones, support them visibly, and let their success pull others along. And below that is a simple strategy for making that happen and for putting that into action. And the reason it is important for librarians to be the leverage points for change is because they sit at the crossroads of every subject, every grade, and nearly every initiative. We have a quiet, perhaps, and profound leverage point for school change. And when we use that intentionally and visibly, we become not just service providers, but instructional leaders and culture shapers. And I think that this is, I will be saying this over and over again. I want you to get out there and thoughtfully lead and become a change agent in your school. I want you to do that with the best interests of the young people you serve in mind, and with your research, and to make it all about the learning. So let's think about that. But now we're going to shift gears again and just talk a little bit again about the culture of school in terms of its organization. It's important to note that schools are called rational bureaucracies, designed to prevent the concentration of power in the hands of one or a few. And so we have a mix of hierarchies. We have the vertical hierarchy, which is typically seen in the presence of a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, various principals, etc. And then we have, and that used to be called, maybe still is, line authority. And we also have horizontal or staff authority. And those are represented typically by grade leaders and department chairs at the secondary level. And so we have this mix in our building, and that helps us understand who our leaders are. Because of these interlocking dependencies, because of the hierarchies, because schools are bureaucracies and you are sometimes vulnerable to people from whom you need cooperation and resources, but over whom you have no control, you need to work on increasing your influence. Because schools are bureaucracies, it is important for school librarians to build influence. Why do we need it? We need it because we need control over our work, and because we have strong philosophical beliefs about our potential impact. One activity you might do, this is just very simple, we have far more people that we touch, but you might want to map your influence in the school culture, or begin to at this point. You might need to analyze your need for influence. From whom do you need help? You might want to analyze your need for influence. Who are the people with whom you need to have the most influence? Here's my list and a few reasons for my own choices. Administrators for good budget and schedule, teachers for access to their learners and as collaborators and partners, the technology director to ensure that I have working hardware, software, and reasonable policies that are in the best interest of children. School secretaries who help me with purchase orders and help me access people the times they're available. Let me know when freezes were started for spending. All of these people were really important to me, in addition to custodians, department chairs, team leaders, grade level leaders, specialists, and coaches. And so these are all people with whom you can develop influence. At least keep in the back of your mind, if you don't do a physical map or if you don't do an action plan or a strategic plan each year, think about who you are impacting and your possible influence on these stakeholder groups. Of course, as we said, you are reliant on your administrators for resource allocation and policy support. You want to ensure that your students are successful and they're healthy and feeling good. You want to make sure that you have curricular buy-in and collaboration or partnership with your teachers. You want to have the trust of your community, and you want to have partnerships with them. That's so important in your success. So you're building a network of influence and support, and that's really important. For instance, one important question you might ask yourself is, what keeps your principal up at night? To influence your principal's view of the library success, you have to move beyond your own professional perspective and understand the pressures, the goals, the structures that drive administrative decision making. These people are under a lot of stress, and I will say it over and over again. Advocacy is helping solve somebody else's problems. And so principals are overloaded, frustrated, and misunderstood because of the complexity of their work. If you can help them with quiet competence, that will change everything. You can build social capital by identifying your principal's needs. You want to row in the same direction as your principal, keeping your own values and your own principles in mind. So find shared connections. Learn about their professional interests, their favorite books and hobbies to create meaningful connections and conversations. Promote their vision. Create a display that features what the principal and other key staff are reading. Make them stars in the building with your largest display case, and highlight your principal as a lead learner. Identify their primary concerns, new state standards, the new information literacy standards, for instance, equity issues relating to tech. There's so much going on, supporting immigrant communities, supporting parents. You can send them relevant research. I often attached in my email journal articles. I put the latest copy of Ed Leadership or Kappan in their mailbox. I curate LibGuides on professional research, and especially academic research for my principals who were going for their PhDs. That helped me make fast friends. And so there's so many things, and mileage will vary. You will find the things that your principals, your administrators need. Keep in mind that they tend to act conservatively. They're going to need evidence and data as they make decision, but try to support their initiatives. Sometimes you'll discover your principal has adopted the Future Ready Pledge, and using the Future Ready librarians diagrams and stuff, you can really support the Future Ready initiative in your school. Volunteer for curriculum committees. Ensure that the library is viewed as part of that horizontal structure. When your principal sees you functioning as an instructional partner who is making life easier for their teachers, their view will shift of you as if perhaps they had a view of you as a manager of books to a facilitator of school-wide change. Share your creativity and enterprise with your principal. Noticeable changes in the library environment can attract the principal's curiosity and have them understand that a refresh is underway in the library. But also do those little things. I really recommend getting a Keurig. When you have a coffee maker and the principal stops by for a cup, that's absolute just perfect. Have informal conversations. Invite them in when you're having a debate for the principal to observe the debate. When your students are, I used to have art students in all the time researching artists and doing things in the style of have the principal be part of the installation as well as the celebration of your literature fair and all that sort of thing, and let the principal shine. As I mentioned before, there are many other leaders in your building. One of your jobs is to uncover leadership, look beyond the formal titles and organizational charts to find those individuals who truly exert influence over the faculty. You want to discover who everyone is listening to, which of your colleagues reach out and share with kindness, who presents at faculty meetings, who leads the hospitality committee, who mentors the new faculty. You also want to understand the culture of teaching. Your teachers have stressful jobs. Their training doesn't always equip them for the realities of their classrooms. They are often isolated. They close their classroom doors and they don't have real ways of sharing other than perhaps that faculty room. They're also often uncertain about the success of their efforts, and they need support. They need support from somebody who really can give them the resources and the instructional partnership that the librarian can offer. As I said, advocacy is solving other people's problems, understanding the challenges other people face, offering expertise, resources, and solution, building trust through meaningful support and partnership, identifying what keeps them all up at night, and reducing their isolation by swooping in and helping. You can do that by doing extreme makeovers of lessons. Ask your teachers for the lesson they hate the most and see if you can redo it. At the beginning of the year or the middle of the year, create a menu of services to remind the teachers of all the things that you can do to help them and their students. Offer to design websites or LibGuide to support their work and to house their lesson plans. Curate appropriate databases and books for lessons. Co-teach research skills in the classroom. There's so much fun you can have working with your faculty colleagues. One of the groups that I think are just the low-hanging fruit are the new teachers. No one will be more grateful for your partnership than new teachers. Imagine having an information or instructional collaborator curating for you, supporting your lessons, introducing valuable databases, building those LibGuides and websites for you from the very beginning. You can make a dramatic impact on new teachers, an impact that will be remembered for their entire careers. It's important that you are visible in this culture. And one way to do this, one very effective way to do this, is by immediately begin working on your virtual presence and enhancing the digital return on investment of the databases and ebooks that you buy. Think about your virtual presence as your second front door. Your library website must be a refreshed destination, not just a brochure. Embed resources directly into your school's learning management system so you're there with the classroom teacher online. Your resources should be available 24/7, barrier-free, and remember that they should work on mobile as well as laptops and desktops. Provide value and evidence of the return on investment. All of these tools will give you granular usage reports to demonstrate their impact on the school community and to show how they improve the quality of student inquiry and student work. Look for leadership among your student groups. Engaged students can become library ambassadors, tech squad members. They can help you spread the word that the library is a jointly owned learning space and that it is cool to be in. The first students who visit you on that first day or the first week of school may be those very students that you need to share the word about what's happening in the library. Build coalitions with students, particularly the leadership teams, to understand their needs and their vision. In fact, speaking of teams, have the golf team or the French club or the poetry group come in and do read posters. I can show you examples of that. But figure out what clubs are missing also. Which young people seem lost? Can you sponsor a club and help them connect? Observe the student interactions, ask them questions about the culture of the school, the activities they'd like to see, and connect with those early birds, the kids, especially at the high school, because the kids are driving to school in some cases. Connect with them. They come into school, and you can have a real easy, kind of casual time with those kiddos in the morning. And connect with athletes, band members. Generally, those people are in the building, especially the swimmers and the wrestlers, before school starts. Welcome those families too. Build social capital with the parents, plan community events, book fairs, literacy nights, join the PTA, attend meetings. Seek volunteers and volunteer coordinators, build advocates, create materials in the language spoken by the families in your communities. Volunteer to use some AI tools to help translate posters and brochures. Don't forget district-level leadership. Many superintendents appreciate the quiet assistance of information professionals to stay informed on educational trends. As I said, that LibGuide I made on educational research was shared with the central office staff and used by them. Think about not just attending school board meetings, but understanding who these members of the community are. What we did when we were looking at technology initiatives was we took school board members around with us on school buses to visit other schools. When we had our renovation project, the school board members came with us. You want to send your annual report to the school board members and make friends of them. Volunteer to speak at the school board meetings. You'll have an opportunity to do a school board. I hope it's not just a pilot. Perhaps in some cases you'll be able to actually make a presentation of your action plan as we're going to be doing in this class. Ultimately, you don't want to just be appreciated for your quiet competence. You want to not operate in the background. You don't want to be a library island. You must mingle outside the library, the faculty room, the cafeteria, the department meetings to really participate in the school's social and professional mesh as well as the school's growth. So consider yourself not an island, and also lead with your small wins. At this point, I know I've overwhelmed you completely with all the things that I think you should do, but small wins for right now. Make good first impressions. Do small resets. Move the furniture around. Use fresh posters. Remember to do that baseline. Record things. Take pictures. Put up great posters. Move the furniture around. I think I said that already. Create a few very simple activity stations, a puzzle or game board table, a charging station, a maker space that's in plastic bins just to get things started, and let them know that something special is beginning to happen in your library. You will find that you'll face challenges. You will see persistent learning gaps. Part of them happened during COVID, but there's also other environmental factors that are occurring. You'll see teacher shortages and staff burnout. You'll be pulled to cover things. You'll see political polarization, just as we see in our families and as we see on all the news shows. But we'll see leadership opportunities in all of those, and I hope that you'll take a good look at some of my ideas of how to change obstacles into opportunities, keeping your eye on equity, keeping your eye on student mental health and the school climate in terms of social and emotional learning. Funding constraints and enrollment shifts. You'll see that some budgets are going to be lower than others. In our class, we see a wide range of budgets, and some students have zero budgets, and some students are very nicely funded. This is not fair. Access to library is an equity issue. And speaking of equity, we'll see various different ways in which equity, inclusion, and culturally responsive education are handled in our school through our field experiences. These are all challenges. They're obstacles in some cases, but I hope that you'll see them as leadership opportunities as well. And as Shirley Chisholm said, you want to seek a seat at the table. Decisions are made by those who show up and engage. Librarians should volunteer for curriculum committees, technology committees, and get leadership roles. My friend Sue Ballard says, if you're not at the table, you may be on the menu. You don't want to be on the menu. And so with those words, I'll end week 2. And I hope that you'll see in our text an awful lot more on school culture and climate and some ways that you might build influence. Let's share them in Canvas as well. See you in the threads.